Springfield's Talk 104.1 and a good Wednesday morning. My name is Nick Reed, 2 days away from not only the Friday Road Show, where we shall broadcast live from Scramblers, that's sponsored by Affordable Towing, but then from 4 to 6, we shall have our happy hour at Retro Metro. It's one of my favorite events where we get together and just enjoy one another's company. You're all invited, every one of you. Anytime between 4 and 6, you can just stop by casually. Maybe you want to have a nice sit-down dinner. If you're wanting to do that, I'd recommend you make a reservation for that, and then perhaps you can have pre-dinner drinks with us, and it's just a nice evening. Great way to kick off the weekend with one of the greatest food and beverage establishments in Springfield, and that is Retro Metro on Republic and Cox. I don't know what other details you need, but should you need them, you can go to ksgf.com and find the information there, or just send a message on the American Transmissions talk and text line, which is 447-KSGF. Also, if you do go to ksgf.com, we have a couple of things going on there. Doobie Brothers, there's details, I believe, about that concert. That's a text-to-win situation where if you text the word brothers to 417-447-KSGF, or talk and text line, that'll get you registered to win a pair of passes for the Doobie Brothers concert at the Great Southern Bank Arena, Thursday, June 15th. And we also have our Biden quote bracket going on. We did this last March, but it was a bracket of Trump nicknames, and it went over really well. This one, however, is audio, so you'll go through, and we've got 3 weeks of this. You go through and listen to the different quotes of Biden over time, and you'll pick your favorites, and then from that, those will advance, and then we'll do it again, and then those will advance, and you all are going to pick his best quote, and one of you who participates is going to win a prize from Pyramid Roofing, okay? What a great way to kick off the morning with all that wonderful information. Speaking of information, the Democrat Party is just fully and unapologetically now the party of censorship. Unapologetically. Many of us grew up in an era, most of you probably, in which Republican or Democrat, whatever our disagreements may have been, there were a few recognized characteristics that set our country apart from countries like China and North Korea, Soviet Union, Cuba, and so many others. And that was freedom of the press. Freedom of speech, the freedom of assembly. In fact, there was a period of time in which Democrats tried to monopolize that characteristic, claim that they were the true defenders of free speech. You had organizations like the ACLU that prided themselves. People on the left would say, I may disagree with what you say, but I will fight to the end for your right to say it. And they are the first ones now that take their marching orders from the government censors, demanding the continued cover-up of information. What we are in the front row observing during this period of time is how countries become tyrannical. And I'm not saying that rhetorically. When you grow up in a free country, which many of us did, and this is no longer a free country, many of us did have the if you want to call it the luxury, I'd say the benefit of growing up in a free country. It was always perplexing how other countries could not want to be a free country. It was always very perplexing. Because everyone recognized ultimately that, hey, we were the best country. I mean, we had the best things, the best people, highest quality of life. The poorest in our country were better off than over 90% of the population in most other countries. Even culturally, our movies, our musics transcended borders. And it was perplexing. You'd think, why do people in other countries, particularly countries that have a vote, why don't they just do what why don't they make their country a free country? It is very, and it's a very simplistic view. In a more dark and macabre micro example, World War II, Germany. We think, how could people have allowed the things to happen? How could they sit by and allow Jewish people to be stigmatized, Jewish people to be demonized, the government force labels upon them, imprison them without any sort of trials, haul them away? How could they? Why would they allow that to happen? That's crazy. Why would they stand by and do nothing? Why would they stand by and say nothing? Why would they at times support it? Culturally, our mindset was we the people, and then there was the government that was supposed to work on our behalf, but there were certain things that we didn't care whether you were Republican or Democrat. You don't violate these certain tenets. You know, I mean, we've got the Fifth Amendment, we got the First Amendment, we have all these different amendments that we recognized as just so important when it comes to human rights, that they were listed out in the Constitution as hands-off government. Culturally, we did not say, well, you're a Democrat, so you shouldn't have freedom of religion. And if the government comes after you, since you're a Democrat, I'll be okay with it. Corruption in government, regardless of Republican or Democrat, was universally condemned and rejected. Richard Nixon's a perfect example of this. Richard Nixon did not resign from office because Democrats were outraged and all Republicans were saying, no, this is good. It was because Republicans there's some corrupt stuff going on here, so we don't support that. We have gotten, however, to the point now where and you observe this as well, people in the media, the majority of which is run by Democrats, and when I'm not just talking like at the top, it's all, 90% plus of staff, reporters, editors, they're Democrats from bottom up, top down. They are attacking a news source for providing information that the government is trying to keep hidden. That they are doing that, they aren't even acting as journalists any longer. They are acting as a proactive censorship wing of the government. It was before my time, but I'm sure many of you will remember, it's famously referred to as the Pentagon Papers. And this is where the Nixon administration tried to stop publication of the actual classified documents in the New York Times. Was going to publish it anyhow. And they went to the Supreme Court as New York Times versus U.S. government, Nixon administration, whatever it was. And the Supreme Court said, hey, listen, it's freedom of the press. So they were allowed to, regardless of the potential damage to national security. And the press, left, right, middle, whatever you want to call it, I mean, they pretty much all in agreement, regardless of political affiliation, regardless of personal feelings regarding Richard Nixon. This was a part of America. This was a win. Now a majority of the same press is siding with people in government who are attacking a media personality for airing footage that isn't classified, that wasn't illegally leaked, that was openly and transparently provided in its totality instead of selected, censored, and edited components of it, as was done by the January 6th committee. And the media is attacking that media outlet, being Fox News, for doing that. This is, it's not a slippery slope. We're down the slope. When you have media outlets, the vast majority of them, that will turn on one other media outlet for reporting information that doesn't necessarily look good for the government, we're no different than Putin's Russia. I remember it would have been about a year ago, and you have the media coverage in Russia regarding the invasion of Ukraine, the further invasion of Ukraine. And a lot of Americans are like, why are Russians, why aren't they upset about this? Why, do they know what's going on and so forth? And no, generally they did not, because 90% plus of the media were simply mouthpieces for the power structure in Russia. That's for Putin. There were a couple of instances in which you had some that spoke out, and they were quickly removed. Putin did what Chuck Schumer, the head of the Democrat Party in the U.S. Senate, the leader of the United States Senate, in the Senate yesterday called for, and that was the removal of these stories from Fox News. And when Putin did it, it was done under a law that gave him the ability to do what it is Chuck Schumer is attempting to do yesterday because of disinformation. For a political party that goes on and on warning us of the dangers of somebody like Putin, they mimic him in their operations. They mimic him in their treatment of the media. And by that, I mean the media, that the very slim minority that doesn't simply act as a mouthpiece for them. And just like Putin, accuse the very few in the media that are willing to expose government, accuse them of being a danger to the country. The Democrat Party, and some like Mitt Romney and Mitch McConnell, Senator Tillis, it's not all Democrats. There are some Republicans as well. They are no different than Putin when it comes to their approach in dealing with a media that exposes elements of the government that do not want to be exposed. Jason Reimer with the latest news update. First alert forecast cloudy, 40% chance of rain today, high 49, rain likely tonight, 40, rain 53 tomorrow. Ooh, Friday mostly sunny, 51. A1 Custom Car Care, all of your car care needs, big, small, that engine light comes on. Don't ignore it. It's there for a reason. I think, well, my car seems to be running fine. Cars have computers in them. They're computers with wheels any longer, and they're designed as best as possible to allow you to keep running without interruption, so they'll compensate here and there, but it's not running the way that it should, and that's why you should not exhort. That's why that light is there, because the vehicles are designed oftentimes to essentially mask, if you will, the symptoms of the problem, so that you can continue to drive effectively and safely. And so, because you may not recognize there's something going on with your vehicle, that's why that light's there, to let you know. Don't ignore it, okay? A1 Custom Car Care for all of your car care needs. YouTube is kicked in the censorship regarding the release of some of these the unedited Democrat version of the January 6th tapes, and showing the rest of the story, if you will. On YouTube, you've got the posting of these stories, and what is occurring is these different alerts that pop up to let you know, well, this probably isn't true. Here's how you know, because CNN says it's not. When you search YouTube at the time of the writing of this story, and you search Tucker Carlson or any variation of the host name combined with January 6 videos, the search returns a blue, quote, developing news alert that tops the search result page. The alerts vary in article content, but always offer users the opportunity to click their way to a corporate media website. One alert for this particular news item suggests users read a CNN article, because CNN, whether it was covering up the Hunter laptop story or promoting the fake Russian collusion hoax, has definitely proven to be an authority figure on the truth. Good job, YouTube. Great job, Google. They suggest that readers or users read the CNN article titled "What to Know About the Tucker Carlson January 6 Footage," which, of course, questions the validity of the footage. The CNN write-up, like so many others, including some Republicans, falsely accused Carlson of trying to downplay the violence. which we'll get to that in a moment, because that, once again, is misinformation. They they also refer viewers who are seeking to see the information, referring users to a Huffington Post article featured by Yahoo News, headline, Hakeem Jeffries sees no sign police vetted January 6 footage McCarthy gave Tucker Carlson. Hakeem Jeffries, the election-denying leader of Democrats in the House. You know, there's one aspect of this that the search engines and the censorship outlets like YouTube, there's an aspect of it that goes unrecognized. And when they're fact-checking or we want to give you a full picture here, so read this story from CNN, read this story from NBC. Those are competitors of Fox News. Just put the ideological component out of it, the political aspect out of it. These are competitors. Would it make sense if you were to search YouTube, you're wanting to, you heard that McDonald's has a really clever new commercial, and so you go to look it up, and you get this alert telling you, well, you should read this article, this press release from Burger King first to get a better, fuller picture of what's going on. And then it's Burger King saying, no, McDonald's isn't as good as we are. Or Ford with Chevy, or Pepsi with Coke. Well, of course not. That would be absurd. Because, among other reasons, competition probably is going to be a little biased. In fact, if you were looking for the single most likely source to have a bias, it would be your direct competition, would it not? Yet that's exactly what YouTube does. If, of course, it's a conservative site. If it is a conservative source, if it is, or it's considered conservative. I don't even consider Fox News conservative. I just consider them shining a wider light on what's going on. You have with the major networks, they're narrowly defined a look at things. They sort of scope in on it. And Fox News pulls back and is like, well, here's, again, to quote Paul Harvey, the rest of the story. So I don't even consider them conservative. They do give conservatives a voice, just like they give liberals a voice. God forbid. But this is how they operate. This is also how they fact check. If you have a conservative perspective or you are Fox News, they find your direct competition. They find the corporations that financially benefit if you fail, and they ask them to set the record straight for their consumers. Can you think of a worse way to do it? Can you think of a more immoral and unethical way to do it? Gee, I wonder what their competition's going to say. I wonder if they're going to give them a thumbs up. The level of absurdity. Springfield's Talk 104.1. I'm Nick Reed. If you haven't signed up for Lunch Bunch, I recommend you do so today. Today is a Lunch Bunch day. Very excited about it. We're going to meet a winner and 5 of her friends or coworkers at Retro Metro, and you can do the same. Just go to ksgf.com and get yourself registered for the Lunch Bunch with Retro Metro. First alert forecast, cloudy today, 40% chance of rain, high of 49, rain 40 tonight, rain tomorrow 53, mostly sunny Friday with a high of 51. There are a number of establishment Republicans that have crossed the aisle and have joined Democrats in their condemnation of the exposure, the full exposure, the full truth, and the release of the 41,000 hours of tape. They were perfectly fine with Democrats falsely sending false information, creating false impressions by editing the footage. They had no problem with that at all. Mitt Romney and Mitch McConnell were not out there condemning the January 6th committee for editing the videos to give people, the American people, the false impression as to what was going on. By the way, not just for some sort of political campaign, but in the context of putting people in prison. In the context of labeling people terrorists. Mitt Romney was nowhere to be found. But the minute an American working for a news network says, how about we look at more of the footage? How about we get a little context here? That they don't care for. I find myself torn to a degree because when I recognize what goes on with many of the Senate Republicans and the leader that was chosen, that being Mitch McConnell, by the Republicans. Now, there were a small handful of Republicans that are believed to and have said they did not vote for Mitch McConnell. Josh Hawley would be one of those individuals. It was a secret vote because many of those Republicans are cowardice POSs. And when I see that ultimately when it comes down to it, they side with those who want to shut down a free press by way of intimidation. They side with the government that edits for propaganda purposes videos in order to characterize Americans as terrorists. And I see the Republican Party as I have the desire to be affiliated and support the Republican Party as much as I do the Democrat Party. But then on the other side, there's McCarthy. That, one, I believe deserves a chance, and two, is the one who turned these tapes over. And so I think to myself, what do I want here? And I suppose what I'd like to see, but I know it's not going to happen, is McCarthy needs to come out swinging at and let the American people know, listen, fact of the matter is there are two divisions within the Republican Party. There are those that are traitors to the voters, traitors to the Constitution, traitors to the Bill of Rights, that will side with deep state, big government. They side with censorship. They side with intimidation of the press. They side with these show trials. And those people are the Mitch McConnells, the Tillises, the Mitt Romneys. And that is a different Republican Party than the one I'm leading. Because that is an instance that I can at least feel that there is some leadership. There is some leader that currently is a position of power that is on the side of the American people. I may not always agree when it comes to the issues, but when it really comes down to it, as it stands now, it is pointless having Republicans when you have people like Mitt Romney and Mitch McConnell. It's pointless as Americans. I'm not even talking. I mean, it's just pointless. And they're dishonest. They're liars is the thing. They are lockstep in their lies with Mitch McConnell and Nancy Pelosi and Kamala Harris. Their shared talking point is that Tucker Carlson is excusing or downplaying the violence. He didn't know such thing. In fact, if you watched the segment, he displayed video of the violence. He never said the violence did not occur. In fact, I don't know of any Fox News personality, any talk show host, any conservative that has said the people who broke laws should not be prosecuted for those things. They are the first ones that are out there saying, if you vandalize, whatever the punishment is for that, you should serve that punishment if you're found guilty. If you committed assault, whatever the punishment is for that, if you should face a trial, innocent until proven guilty. If you're found guilty, yes, you should. They are the first ones that are out there saying it. For people like Mitt Romney and Mitch McConnell to claim that the people who have been steadfast in saying hold people accountable who has violated the law, claiming that they are downplaying it or pretending as if it didn't happen, they are liars. They are gaslighting you. Mitch McConnell is no better than Chuck Schumer. Mitt Romney is no better than Nancy Pelosi. And I know if you're a Republican, that is a difficult thing to hear. But pretending otherwise does not help things. That's how we end up in the position that we're in. You have Mitch McConnell saying, with regards to the presentation on Fox News last night, I want to associate myself entirely with the opinion of the chief of the Capitol Police about what happened. North Carolina Senator Tom Tillis called the reporting BS, saying, I don't think it's helpful, but I do think it's important to point out that that's happened on both ends of the political spectrum, and they're both wrong. What's interesting, if you notice, all of the condemnation and criticism of Tucker Carlson, it's just name-calling and these sort of, well, it's just BS. They don't dispute the footage. It's amazing how the left operates. We talked about this in the context of the Springfield School District and the coordinated attack by the head of MSU and Burrell and some of the school board members and so forth on Dr. M. And it all stemmed from Dr. M attending that event in which they pulled kids out of school in order to do social training, this indoctrination. And she caught him lying to the students, and she called him out on it. And now they're this full attack. But the one thing that none of them do in attacking her is deny that the students were lied to. They don't deny it. But they just attack her. None of the people, whether it's Chuck Schumer or any of the liberal media outlets or Mitch McConnell or Mitt Romney, none of them are saying, oh, that footage is fake. What Tucker Carlson has put here, this part here is incorrect. This footage here is not correct. They just name call. You've got North Dakota Senator Kevin Cramer, again, Republican. I think that breaking through glass windows and doors to get into the Capitol against the orders of police is a crime. Okay, no one said otherwise. No one has said otherwise. Mitt Romney, the only Republican in the upper chamber to vote for President Donald Trump's impeachment conviction twice, compared Carlson to Alex Jones and called McCarthy's decision to exercise his First Amendment rights dangerous and disgusting. Of course, Mitt Romney's also the same person that called veteran Tulsi Gabbard treasonous, which, of course, the punishment for is death. So he's a real classy guy that seems to have a real love for veterans. Accuses Tulsi Gabbard, a veteran of a crime in which the death penalty is a possibility, and seems perfectly fine with the fact that a veteran was killed who was unarmed in the Capitol on January 6th. No problem with that, evidently. South Dakota Republican Senator Mike Rounds also joined the chorus against Carlson. I was there on January 6th. I saw what happened. I saw the aftermath. There was violence on January 6th. No one said there wasn't. Tucker Carlson did not say there was no violence. In fact, he showed footage of the violence. But he also said, and God forbid, here's some other things that occurred. Let me tell you what this is like. You've seen during the campaign events, particularly when Hillary Clinton was running, and there would be a side-by-side visual, and, oh, here is a shot of CNN covering the event, and it's a relatively tight shot, and there's Hillary, and you can, you see, there are people behind her, and then a crowd of people. Then next to it will be a far shot. And you see that it's an arena that's 80% empty. And that they have taken all of the people who did show up and they crammed them together and then zoomed in so that it appeared as if it was a crowded event. They narrowed the view in order to mislead you. That's what the January 6th committee did with these videos. They narrowed the view. So you thought something was going on that was much different than the whole picture. What Tucker Carlson has done is shown the pullback picture, what he is in the process of doing. Now, when that was done on numerous occasions with Hillary Clinton events, nobody denied that there were 100 people there. No one claimed that there was no event. But there was a recognition that that zoomed in view was misleading as to what was actually happening on the larger stage. That is what McCarthy, as Speaker of the House, is allowing to happen by releasing these tapes. It is not denying that people broke the law. It is not denying that people broke windows or committed acts of vandalism or violence. It is simply noting, by the way, here are the things that were going on around it. Anyone, whether they are in government, in press, in the press, just an average citizen, whomever they are, that wants you to have less information about any situation is dishonest. I don't care what it is. No honest person ever demonizes a person having more information about a situation in order to make a decision or an assessment in terms of what they think ultimately about that situation. No one. It is dishonest, it's unethical, and it's weak. And it's a sign and a signal of people. Which one of these liberal papers? Is it the Post or one of these, Democracy Dies in Darkness? The whole virtue signaling of that position is that we got to make sure as much information is out there as possible, particularly when it comes to the government. I mean, sunlight, the more light, the better the disinfectant, and if things aren't exposed, that's how democracy dies. Boy, they're all scrambling to cover this up, aren't they? And the one guy, Tucker Carlson, who's doing what they all claim that they do. Hold people accountable. Or we'll go to jail if we have to get information out there. We'll protect our sources. Whatever it takes. We're going to do it to make sure, because democracy dies in darkness. Here, Tucker Carlson, oh, yeah, nope, I agree totally. Let's get some exposure on these. Well, you can't do that. Oh, my God, what's wrong with you, man? The vast majority of people, and the thing is, Tucker Carlson will get criticized. He'll get mocked. Well, he's not a real journalist. Whether, classify him, characterize him, whatever you want. But he's doing what journalists once upon a time did in this country. And now, they're bootlickers of the government. They are the propaganda machines of the government. They will cover for the government. They will demonize Americans and even other journalists who try and expose the government. Just another example of the blatant hypocrisy of these unethical and dishonest people. Outside of January 6th, can you think of a single instance in which an unarmed person was shot and killed by law enforcement, in which the left did not demand to see body cam footage? Can you think of a single instance? Can you think of a single instance in which there was some sort of physical conflict between citizens and law enforcement? And if it was known, the government's like, all right, well, we have some footage that we're holding on to. Can you think of a single instance in which the left said, no, don't release it? Of course not. They'll burn down buildings demanding it get released. But when it comes to January 6th, keep it all quiet, keep it all covered up, even if an unarmed person was shot and killed. They're posers, they're liars, they're dishonest. Springfield's Talk 104.1, I'm Nick Reed. You've got some of these media outlets, YouTube and others, that are, of course, giving you warnings about the Tucker Carlson pieces and how it could be disinformation. Meanwhile, I see these stories about a guy by the name of Trevor the Time Traveler, and he claims he's from the future, and he gives exact dates of events like World War III. And amazingly enough, there are no warnings for stories regarding Trevor the Time Traveler. News in 60 seconds. Springfield's Talk 1041. I am Nick Reed. I want a great homeloan.com. For all of your home loan needs, there's one name for you to remember, Carricker. There's a few others. There's Don, Anthony, and Alex. They're all Carrickers. Of course, they have others working on their team as well. 7 days a week, up until 9 o'clock at night, you have access to them. None of that East Coast, 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. stuff. I recommend them. I have for years. I've used them. They do a tremendous job. I know many of you have as well, and I just can't strongly enough. If you're going to go that route, home loan, or just any questions at all, start at iwantagreathomeloan.com because you do. We used to not talk much about school board elections. About a decade ago, I remember we did interviews for, it was people running for Springfield School Board, and I forget if it was simply for podcast or if it was for on air, but I remember thinking all these answers are the same. I mean, it's just exactly the same. Why are you running? What do you think the job of a school board? Well, to listen to the administration and take from them what it is we need and make sure that we get it and so forth. And so there, I don't know. It just seemed people didn't pay attention to school board meetings. People didn't vote. They didn't know who their school board members were. And in my opinion, the entire understanding as to whom it is that the school board is supposed to be representing was upside down. And this changed over the last couple of years on a national level and also a local level, and we've focused on Springfield quite a bit. And aside from the different personalities involved, there is still this, what I consider to be a vast and damaging misunderstanding as to what the purpose of a school board is. And Springfield is not the only district, obviously, that has some of these issues. And the Ozark district has been having some problems, according to a number of folks who currently and in the past have worked for the district in a similar fashion. And given that we do have so much coverage of what goes on in Springfield, we wanted to give a voice to those individuals as well, particularly, again, as school board elections come up. And if anything, just to hopefully reset people's recognition and understanding regarding who is in charge of school districts versus who should be in charge of school districts. So we're going to do that coming up here in just a couple of moments. Jason Rima first with the latest news update. First alert forecast sponsored by St. Clair of the Ozarks Home Improvements. Cloudy, 40% chance of rain today. High of 49. Rain tonight, 40. 53 tomorrow with more rain, then sunshine with a high on Friday of 51. We're going to jump right into this. As I mentioned earlier, there has been, and I think as a community, we're all much better off, and kids specifically, when the parents really start paying attention and once again re-engage and have a say in their child's education. It's interesting because for the longest time we would hear oftentimes schools sort of market themselves as wanting that. We really want parents to be involved. But we've seen that oftentimes that's not necessarily the case, and when parents do get too involved, there's massive pushback, and we've seen that in Springfield. There has been some chatter, if you will, regarding Ozark School District, and in fact, there's a website that's been launched that is there to inform the public as to some of these concerns. There's a billboard campaign that was launched in the last couple of days as well, and I'm going to welcome in studio Major Danny Kazer, Christina Tonsing, and Shelley Pettit, and you all have different backgrounds, different involvements, and so forth. So I'm just going to have you, if you would, and we can start with you, Danny, if that's all right. Your place in all of this, and we can have each of you do that just so people can get to know you briefly, and then why it is you're doing what you're doing, and we'll get into some of the concerns and backgrounds here. So if you would just go ahead.
So thank you. I taught at Ozark High School in the junior RTC program for 8 years there. Big fan of the Ozark School District. My first several weeks there, it seems there wasn't a day that I didn't come home bragging about some new discovery about what a great school district we had. Really exciting opportunity to get to work with teenagers while they are working through some kind of formative years of their life, and provide them some experiences that we hope will help set them up for success down the road. So I had nothing but praise for Ozark School District until I encountered a situation or two where I had to call foul on something that I saw the district was doing. And it was how the district responded to that showed me the ugly side of the district that I think most teachers don't see, unless somebody close to you has experienced the kind of retaliation that we're here to talk about today. You just see that brilliant side of the school district and think that all must be well, that what you don't see mirrors what you do see, and you got to have somebody point out to you what's going on behind the scenes. So yeah, that's why we're here today.
How about you, Shelley?
Hi, thanks for having us on the show this morning. I am a former employee of Ozark School District. I spent 10 years at the middle school teaching at-risk children, and loved my job, loved working in my building. It was great until I stood up for safety concerns involving air quality issues. Okay. I was personally sick, there were teachers sick, students having reactions, and once I stood up to that, my situation quickly changed, and I was targeted, threatened, harassed, and eventually forced out of my job in 2021.
Okay. And Christina?
I'm Christina Tonsing. I'm just an involved parent from the community, but I'm standing in for another teacher, Tom Swift, and I've personally kind of experienced some of that same retaliation that they're talking about. It seems like if there's some kind of pushback or problem brought to the surface, then the person is targeted and forced out.
Clearly we've had conversations prior to you all coming here on the air, and the real theme that I've gotten isn't so much the individual situations themselves, but that relationship, how they're dealt with, the culture. One of the things that I brag off air, I probably should on air more. This really is the best place I've ever worked, and one of the reasons it is that culture. You're never really worried about, well, if I have a concern, and I've worked at places where that is the case. You just keep your mouth shut because you know that it's either not worth it or things are going to get worse for you. And it's my understanding that's your big concern here, is that culture in Ozark. And of course the school board comes into play here as well. And before we do get to that, to some degree, obviously people are going to want to know, okay, well, what was the conflict that led to this recognition or feeling anyhow that the way that the district deals with these things is not is not healthy, if you will. And so we could start with you, Danny, and just a bit of a background on what began this conflict with you and the district.
Sure. So I've got, in addition to the website that we just launched, the saveozarkschools.org website, I've had a website telling my story that's been up for several months now. And in that website, I even invite the readers to just assume that whatever the school says I did wrong, I actually did wrong. Now, I'll set the record straight here momentarily. But I've said just assume that what I was accused of, I did wrong. And now let's just ask what kind of procedure the school district used thereafter to investigate and to adjudicate those concerns. Because once you look at the process, the procedure, the integrity of the process, you recognize there is no grounds for believing anything that the school district said about what I did wrong. So, to tell the story a little bit, it first started a couple of years ago when Ozark School District, particularly Ozark High School, recognizing that it was outgrowing the capacity of the building, began looking for a way to expand its capacity without being in a position to build a new high school, partly because the community rightly would prefer to rally around a single high school and not split us between a couple of different high schools. So without being able to build a new high school, their plan for absorbing the increasing student load was to build a satellite campus and to send a portion of the students there. As they wrestled with how to sell this as a opportunity rather than just an unfortunate necessity, their first plan was to make this a elective center. And so they informed each of the elective programs at the high school that we're going to be relocating you to this other campus, and frankly asking us our thoughts about it. And when they came to our junior ROTC program, we said we have grave reservations about this. Just to kind of summarize those, a lot of what we were able to do with students, and I dare say the majority of what we can do with them, revolves around or requires them feeling identified with the program. They feel like being a junior ROTC cadet is part of who they are. Being part of our drill team, our Raider team, our rifle team is an integral part of their identity. And that is reinforced by the fact that they have constant access to us at school. They come hang out with us in the mornings before school, either for practice or just for kind of social opportunity. They would come to us during their lunch break. They would come to us when they had a substitute in class and could sneak out of class. They would come to us whenever they could because that was their home, the place that they felt valued, respected, and so on. Certainly they'd hang out with us after school. But if you move us off-site to a satellite campus, those relationships that give us the ability to shape kids' lives are severely compromised. So we explained that all to the school district. Their response essentially, without having articulated this way, was, if our largest elective doesn't move to our elective center, then how do we call ourselves an elective center? And so they essentially said, well, we appreciate your concerns, be prepared to move. Now, what kind of space requirements do you need over there? So we articulated the space requirements that we need in order for our drill team to practice, our rifle team to practice, Raider training facilities, and so on, things that we had at the high school already but wouldn't have at the remote campus. And they said, well, we're going to have to scale that way back. And we said, look, that's going to be critical to our program if you do. So when we found no responsiveness from the district administrators, we instructors put our heads together and said, the next step is a little bit, it risks inflaming some tensions here. But the next step would be for us to inform the parents of the school district's plan and just invite the parents to weigh in on it. So that's what we did. And I authored that email to all the parents that said, here's the school district's plan, here's our reservations about it. And if you share any of our concerns, we invite you to inform the school district administrators of your feelings on this. Well, evidently the school district administrators did receive some emails, some phone calls, as I was promptly summoned in to see the superintendent and frankly, a panel of administrators to answer for why I would inform the public of school district operational plans.
Specifically the parents whose kids would be impacted, right?
And it's comical because not only has the school district modeled this behavior itself with assembling all the staff across the district and saying, hey, we need to inform you of something the legislature is doing and ask you to please lobby the legislature against it. So not only had the school district already modeled this,
right,
but school district policy and state law both explicitly protect your right to inform the public about any operational concerns in a governmental institution. So they couldn't really say I had done wrong. They just told me how deeply offended they were. And interestingly, our superintendent closed out that conversation with these words. it will be a long time before I will ever be able to feel like I can trust you again. I didn't realize at the time that that was a forewarning that don't step out of line again. That's your one freebie. So the next episode that arose was a couple of years later. We had been in COVID masks all of, 2020, 2021. In the 21-22 school year, we came out of the COVID masks, and we found a couple of students had gotten nose piercings during that time. And either they'd had them before, and because of the COVID masks, we didn't see them, or they had gotten them more recently. But regardless, no issues with them having a nose piercing until it comes time to put on the uniform of the United States Army, which the cadets wear, or some variation of it. And the regulations, both in the junior RTC context and the Army context, which junior RTC regulations obligate us to also adhere to, are very explicit. You can have, they've relaxed a little bit now, but even with the relaxations since then, they allow limited facial jewelry, and that's only in the ears. So these nose piercings, one of our two cadets who had gotten a piercing recently continued to wear her face mask, and because of that, we didn't even realize that she had the piercing. It didn't register with us anyway. But the one cadet who wasn't wearing a mask, we informed her, hey, you got to remove this piercing. She was willing to do so, but had a little difficulty. When it finally came down to the piercing getting removed, she and this other cadet who felt some vulnerability because she too had a piercing she didn't want to remove, made it known to the school that junior RTC isn't allowing us to wear our facial piercings. Well, I think a parent got involved there somewhere as well. And so the school district said, hey, you got to let these kids wear their facial piercings. And we said, no, it's not up to us.
Right.
Army regulation is clear on this. We have been charged with enforcing this regulation. And the school district said, nevertheless, you got to let them wear their facial piercings. And I said, let me show you the regulation. Let me show you it's not our authority. It's not your authority. The authority for this is clear. The regulation is clear.
It's not you to let them do that.
That's absolutely right. It's not on us. We didn't implement this policy. We don't have the authority to reverse this policy. They said, nevertheless, you need to do it.
We're going to take on the Army.
Well, so our response to them is, we're not going to take on the Army, and we're not going to take on you. We're going to comply. But I am charged by the Army with enforcing this regulation and running this program in accordance with regulation. So I'm just informing you that while we will comply with you, I also must report to the Army our non-compliance with Army regulation and explain to them why we are. Well, promptly after doing so, I was then served with a professional improvement plan that was full of really, frankly, ridiculous allegations about how my conduct had slipped and how my behavior was questionable and how I needed to reform. And so I took that in stride. I did write a detailed response to that. Initially, I thought, hey, this is just an insult to my pride. It doesn't warrant any response. But then I thought, no, it isn't. That's not what this is. This is setting a paper trail for future adverse action. So I have to respond to this. So I responded in great detail to each of the allegations, demonstrating the falsehood of the allegations. Well, 9 school days later, I was then suspended for investigation into a new allegation. That next allegation, the investigation on it, was every bit as obviously fraudulent. In fact, after a week after having been charged, with no investigator coming to me and saying, hey, here are the charges, we want to talk to you about them, all I knew was I was suspended because of a generalized concern. So a week after this suspension, I retained an attorney. My attorney then started communicating with the school's attorney and was told within that first week of the two attorneys talking, hey, we're just going to give the guy a notice of deficiency and the investigation and return him to work. Well, that was telling for a couple of reasons. One, a notice of deficiency is the last step the district has to do before firing you. So that made very clear this is just hostile action. Second is they still hadn't interviewed me. They hadn't interviewed any of the students that they claim were audience to this last infraction. Frankly, the last infraction, it was alleged that I taught a class that had some sexist comments in it. But they didn't interview any of the students. It's a class I've taught for years, had a colleague present every time. A colleague was present every time, this instance as well. But it was quite telling that without even talking to me about the allegations, they said, we are ready to give him a notice of deficiency and to move on. So all of that just tells me the issue is you spoke out once and you were warned. You spoke out again and you don't get another warning. You get sent home.
So we've got in studio with us Major Danny Kazare, Junior ROTC, formerly of the Ozark School District, Christina Tonsing, a parent concerned, and Shelley Pettit, former teacher. And we're going to hear from you here in a moment, your story. And again, this isn't so much about these instances, these conflicts, but how they were dealt with, the culture there within the district. And then, of course, I want to also, here in just a few moments, when we hear from the two of you, the school boards play in this. And because, again, I've got sort of this skewed view that they are supposed to be there representing the community as opposed to the school district. And so we'll find out your perspective on that as we continue on this morning. Springfield's Talk 104.1. I'm Nick Reed. Aller Building Company, OLLER, for all of your home building needs. Brand new home. You don't want to do any remodeling. Maybe you're downsizing. The kids are out of the house. You don't want to have so much upkeep, but you also don't want to do any remodeling. So you go to Aller Building Company, their brand new showroom floor, and in 2 hours' time, if you're decisive, you can have your home designed from the countertops to the fixtures, the whole feel from the inside and out. Of course, you're more than welcome to take more than 2 hours, but it has been done before. And then day one, you walk into that home, it's exactly as you want it with no remodeling. That's Aller Building Company, OLLER. Springfield's Talk 1041. I am Nick Reed. The First Alert forecast sponsored by Navant. Employee benefits that work. Cloudy today, 40% chance of rain. I have 49 tonight, rain likely 40. Rain tomorrow, 53, mostly sunny on Friday with a high of 51. Once upon a time, just mere years ago, talking about school and school issues, unless it was some disciplinary thing that made the news, it was so boring, no one cared. But an amazing thing happened with COVID. Along with a few moves by the current administration and the Justice Department and, parents being labeled as domestic terrorists and so forth, people became just a little more interested, and we've seen, oddly enough, a national interest in some of the most local races that you can have, and those are school board elections and what's going on in the school districts. We've done a tremendous amount of focus when it comes to Springfield. There is a very proactive push by some folks that have worked within and or concerned parents within the Ozark School District. There's a website that has been pushing information out there regarding some specific stories and instances. There are billboards now out there as well to try to bring attention to this. And so we've got 3 of those individuals in studio. If you missed the first half of the discussion, we'll have the podcast up at ksgf.com and the KSGF app as well. Major Danny Kazer is with us, Christina Tonsing, and Shelley Pettit, and we talked with Mr. Kazer in the last segment and some of the background of his story, and we'll go, Shelley, to you if you don't mind, as a former teacher, and give us a brief overview of the situation, if you will, that led to the conflict within the district and the ultimate concern of how these conflicts are dealt with.
Okay. I will try to condense this, but I encourage people to visit saveozarkschools.org to read my full story. So I was moved to a new classroom in 2017. That classroom had a lot of water intrusion problems. I began getting ill. Many teachers were getting ill. Students were having reactions. And so according to school board policy GBCB5, we are to report any dangerous situations. And so I was very concerned about the air quality. So I put a work order in, and I guess I didn't realize that reporting mold issues was a big deal, but apparently it is in Ozark School District. My concerns were dismissed. They blamed it on my essential oil diffuser. But then later I could smell chemicals. They had sprayed chemicals and all that. So I just let it go. And then every year during summer break, I would get better. Mm-hmm. And then I would go back to the classroom when school started again. So I went through this 2017, 2018, put another work order in. They blamed it on my plants. 2019.
Plants are bad for you.
Yes.
They're known for that.
Especially bad for
Yeah.
you.
So the same thing. So 2019, they blamed it on, natural cleaning supplies under my sink and all this. Well, there was actually mold under my sink, and I got in a lot of trouble for putting too much detailed work orders in. I was reprimanded from the administrator to come to him personally. They didn't want any of this on record. They did find black mold that year in the building. When the custodians or maintenance workers were there to remove the sink in my room, I took pictures, and that was a big no-no. Mm-hmm. So I was called in the office, and I was put on a professional improvement plan. I was told that that was against school board policy, of course, and I wasn't allowed to, one of the things was I wasn't allowed to speak to maintenance workers or custodians, or it would result in immediate termination. After this PIP, they told me I couldn't have a cell phone, limited time on my computer, and administrators would come in my room multiple times every day to intimidate me, trying to catch me doing something wrong, to terminate me immediately. I was relocated the next year to the junior high. Okay, everything went great at the junior high that year, no problems. We were allowed to wear, I have a respiratory issue from the mold-induced mold illness from being at work. And so I had an exemption to wear, to not wear a mask. Then when I was moved, the next year came around, we were able to wear a shield the first year. Then they changed it the beginning of 2021. They refused, district administrators refused to accept my medical exemption. Okay. So I was forced to take family medical leave. And then when that was up, they still wouldn't give, they refused to follow my medical exemption and doctor's orders. And so I was basically forced to resign. And so I resigned on November 9th. Was coerced to resign, I should say, because they would not work with me or my doctor. And told me I would not be in good standing,
Right.
all these things.
What did you teach?
At-risk students. So ISS, I had strategies students.
I want to note, and I've noted this a couple times because it's the most obviously these instances in which there were concerns that you have all had with the district. This isn't about selling that so much. It's not, a
Right.
tit for tat in that, but again, it's about the culture for you all in terms of how how you were dealt with for having concerns. Christina, you're a parent.
Yes.
So how did you get all mixed up with this?
Well, I saw it happening first with one person and then got reports, more and more reports, another report of the same kind of retaliation, intimidation, harassment. The parents were concerned after Major Kazera was suspended. The parents were concerned that it kept going on for so long. Board policy and state statute says after 30 days there has to be a public hearing. So
Did you have a child in one of the?
yes,
Okay, got it.
yes, 2 of them.
Got it. Okay.
It's a great program.
So you, this is why I'm really glad that you're here, because this is the perspective that oftentimes gets left out, the actual parent of the student.
So
And the student, oftentimes that is their perspective as well. It's shared.
good, yes. So many of the parents had this same concern, and I'm a teacher, so I'm like, oh no, we'll just contact the principal, we'll just follow this board policy. I was reading the different policies to see. So eventually we got to where we went to the board meeting in February just to speak. We wanted to share a little bit of testimony. We felt like the administrators were stonewalling us when we would try to intervene. So we felt like we could talk to the board, and they just didn't understand what was happening. They just didn't know. We weren't even allowed to speak at all. They didn't let us speak. And so then more and more retaliation became apparent even to me. I had been in the school tutoring for the last 5 months. I teach math, so my son and his kids were getting ready for some competitions.
Right.
They needed to have their math grades up. Got approval from the building. I got an administrator. I got approval from the district administration to be there. Volunteer tutoring. I was an approved volunteer. So after that February board meeting, with the kind of a little bit of a ruckus, 2 weeks later, I'm in the building tutoring a student's parents had her contact me the night before, and we'd set up a time for me to meet her before school and tutor before her test. And the superintendent was there, came over, called me to the side, kind of harassed me about being there, and I explained that I had permission, and he didn't believe me. He said, we'll see about that. Spent a little bit of time texting, calling around. Eventually came back and said, whatever authority you thought you had to be here, you can't be here anymore. You can't do this. So I questioned him a little bit about that. So there's more story.
Right.
Anyway, the point is the students around that area observed him, and one of them texted to her friends, the superintendent is yelling at Mama Tunsing. I mean, in public, that was happening. So that kind of atmosphere that that I'd heard from different teachers of happening to them. If you say something, if you step out of line, you're targeted and you're retaliated against. I saw, oh, it's true. It's true. And I meant to come here and talk a little bit about Tom's story. Should I tell you Tom's story?
Yeah,
also?
please. Let's do
Okay.
it. Which I know that is on also the website saveozarkschools.org.
Yes, Tom Swift had published a letter earlier publicly. He couldn't come today because he's in the midst of negotiation with the school district, a settlement, a separation agreement. Because he has experienced, honestly, PTSD like symptoms. Many of the other teachers have experienced that have been through that kind of retaliation. So he has taught for more than 31 years. So teachers can retire at 20. If they buy back some of their years, they can retire at 25. And he loves teaching. He's devoted to his kids. So he's a great teacher. He's gotten Teacher of the Year awards. During this same time that Shelley's talking about with the mold and the health and the air quality issues, Tom was involved in that in another area, and he made that known publicly. And so he received, it's the same pattern. He received a professional improvement plan that was filled with all kinds of things that are verifiably false. Things that he didn't do, things that he didn't say. Emails were exchanged that the professional improvement plan even actually said the opposite of what the emails had said. So that same kind of retaliation thing happens over and over. If you step out of line, if you challenge the boss, then you get a target and you get punished. And that's not the way. We have laws protecting against that. It's supposed to be that the school board is the person that you appeal to if the administrators aren't acting right. Who oversees the administrators?
Well, and that's what I want to talk about next. We're going to get a traffic update, and then we will touch on that as we talk about the Ozark Public Schools concerns here. Again, the website, saveozarkschools.org, as we talk with Danny Kazer, Christina Tunsing, and Shelley Pettit more in moments on Springfield's Talk 104.1. I'm Nick Reed. Save Ozarkschools.org, a site. Is this what the billboard is promoting, driving people to for more information?
Yes, there's a series of different images. They kind of cycle through the billboard at different times, but they're all designed to catch public interest and drive them to the website.
We've been talking this hour with Major Danny Kazer, Junior ROTC, formerly of Ozark School District, Christina Tunsing, a concerned parent, and Shelley Pettit, a former teacher also, about I guess the background, if you will, or concerns that you all had in different capacities, but what you saw, I'm hearing, as the larger problem is that the way these things should be dealt with weren't dealt with properly culturally, and but also perhaps not in accordance with protections that are in place. School boards, I have just such a frustration with, though I think things are getting better, and it is. School boards were developed, and frankly, to go back, not to get too wonky here, but I mean, Thomas Jefferson wrote of these things specifically about the idea of school boards, who runs the schools, and it was very important that the local communities decide these things. And this is what school boards were to be, the representation of the people, to tell the district, this is what we collectively as a people, as representatives of the people, these are the things that we expect. This is what we want. We are here to hold you accountable to the community at large. But what has, in my assessment over time, instead occurred is it's the opposite. They in their minds represent the administrators. They represent the school. So their communication with the community is to come tell you when they need a bond passed or a tax increase or whatever it may be. And frankly, I had just given up on the whole concept of school boards for the longest time because I thought it's all backwards. Things I think are beginning to change, however. That being said, what has given parent and teachers and junior ROTC, what has been the relationship and the exchange with the school board in Ozark regarding all of this?
So if I may, I want to step back just a little bit to set the stage for why it's so important for that school board to be involved. We are not talking right now about an accidental misstep by a district administrator. We're not talking about 2 or 3 accidental missteps by district administrators. What we're talking about is a well-established practice of retaliating against outspoken teachers. So when we did a survey of teachers, just an informal survey a year ago, we found at that point in time over 50 teachers, most of whom said, I cannot tell my story publicly, but man, do I stand behind you, and here's a little bit about my story. Since then, we've seen many more cases come out that make clear that this is a widespread problem, and that's why a school board needs to be supervising this. I think it's a structural or organizational problem fundamentally. I think our founding fathers were clear in all of their writings. Anytime you consolidate too much power in the hands of too few without checks on their authority, you will experience tyranny. And so that's what we have in a school district. Is it's a top-driven organization. We've got a superintendent at the top who's surrounded by his loyal lieutenants, and they have a degree of power and control which is appropriate. Frankly, it's appropriate for them to have that and to have that authority and that oversight and expertise and so on. If there's an honest broker somewhere in the process who can look over their shoulder and say, you know, every now and then, no matter how sincere you are, no matter how authentic you are, we think you might be a little biased in your perception. Well, we don't have that with school boards right now. So when you have an administrator who feels that he's engaged, sincerely feels that he's engaged in a noble cause, taking care of our children, and who feels that he's well qualified for the job, this dynamic is kind of termed noble cause corruption. When you feel like, because I'm engaged in a noble cause, the ends justify the means, whatever I need to do. If I need to make an omelet, I'm going to break a few eggs along the way, as goes the common saying. You know, Joseph Stalin's chief of the secret police famously boasted that if you show me the man, I'll show you the crime. The idea that it doesn't matter how innocent you are, I can prove your guilt. And that's why we need a school board to stand up and say, when we've got administrators who feel immune, who feel they develop a sense of arrogance about them just because the power structure contributes to that, and because there is no check on their authority. So now we need a school board to say, hold on now. Not only does district policy and state law require that we investigate some of these things that you're doing, but just good prudent judgment requires that we look over your shoulder. In fact, one of the things I would like people to understand is you only know if someone's exceptional if you actually do a check on them. You can't just let them brag to you about how exceptional they are and say, well, you must be because you brag about it so much. If you don't independently confirm the behavior of your superintendent and his senior lieutenants, then you don't have any grounds for your confidence in them. What we see in Ozark right now is representative of a nationwide problem because schools are structured the same. Because, and frankly, part of this is the more that states and federal government exert influence over education, the more local communities feel like, well, then it's not our district anymore. We don't need to pay attention. So when local community members aren't trying to pay attention, school board members don't feel like there's anyone they have to answer to either. And it just becomes their default position that we are the facilitators of the superintendent's agenda. When he needs something rubber stamped, we say, go get him, boy, way to do it. And that's the relationship that we have right now, is school boards that answer to the superintendent. It becomes clear you can attend a single school board meeting and see that dynamic play out. From where he is positioned in the room, to his controlling of the agenda, his moderating of the meeting, it's clear who's in charge at those meetings, and it's an inverted dynamic from what it should be.
Of course, I can't speak for you all and your perspective, and to me, this isn't about ultimately these people are bad or these people are. It is these are almost oftentimes symptoms of the problem, because I believe, you can have otherwise well-meaning people, but if they are put in a position in which they are given authorities that really don't belong to them, well, of course they're going to use them. I mean, it almost creates that scenario. So it's not even about personalities so much, though. Not that those things aren't important, but it is about this is why the school boards are so important, because things can get off track. The dynamic can get turned upside down, and you can end up with parents that just totally and completely unengaged because they feel, what's the point if a school board whose members are supposed to be the community directing these things don't do just that? We're going to take just 60 seconds, and then I'll read a couple text messages that also came in regarding this, and then any final thoughts with you all as we talk with Major Danny Kazer, Christina Tunsing, and Shelley Pettit. It's SaveOzarkSchools.org. I'm Nick Reed. Okay. SaveOzarkSchools.org. You may see billboards around. We've spent this hour talking with Major Danny Kazer, Christina Tunsing, and Shelley Pettit, all in their different capacities, expressing their concerns of the way things are run in terms of the school board relationship with the community and the school and so forth. You can go back and listen to the podcast. Want to just quickly read some of the text messages that have come in. One saying, as a teacher, I too have been, quote, bullied by administrators after standing up for the truth. I've heard stories from other districts around here as well. Teachers are notorious for not sticking together, so we can be pretty easy targets. One saying, please give my gratitude to Major. He helped my family so much with the JROTC program, the Rosario family. And another saying that the Ozark board tried to intimidate me when I signed up to speak at a meeting. Before the meeting, they brought me in a room with no other people present, where the superintendent aggressively confronted me to the point that the board president had to intervene. So we've got about 2 minutes left. Any final thoughts that you all have?
I would just like to add that I am active politically in different groups, and so I know our legislators and representatives, and I asked them, I said, what can I do about this? I see this problem. There are some allegations against the administrators, and I thought the school board should address those. They wouldn't listen or respond. And the legislators said, talk to the school board, get involved with the school board, talk to them. But they won't respond. And it wasn't just me, but the teachers have appealed to the school board for help, and the school board says, we are not responding. We refuse to respond, and in fact, we won't respond. Don't write to us anymore.
So I guess just one other kind of example of the absurdity we see from the school board is,
We do have about 60 seconds
all
just
right.
to give you a heads up.
So just on my case is just one. There's numerous examples of this level, but on one of them, we'd petitioned them repeatedly for the hearing that state law requires. They insisted over and over they're not required to hold it. They found different excuses. And in the end, they changed their tone and said, actually, we did hold a hearing on your case. You just weren't invited to that hearing.
Well,
so that's the kind of just, I don't know, dystopia that we see from our school boards right now. But I want to touch on something you said earlier about we're not calling these people bad. What we are saying is there is a power dynamic, a structural arrangement that means that if the school board is not actively, attentively, aggressively supervising the school district, this is the natural course. And we see it outside of Ozark as well as inside.
Again, you may see the billboards around saveozarkschools.org. Danny Kazer, Christina Tunsing, Shelley Pettit, thank you so much for coming in this morning. I appreciate it.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you.
All right. And like I said, any of it that you missed, please feel free to visit the podcast on demand section at ksgf.com or download the KSGF app. News in 60 seconds. I'm Nick Reed. Garage experts. What a thing to be an expert at. If you're a homeowner, odds are you have a garage. Odds are. Not all homes do. Some just have a driveway, some have a carport, but many of them have garages. And it's not a room that you consider showing someone. You don't show it off. You don't go, you want to see my garage? Maybe if you have a new car or a new lawnmower, or some new tools, you show that off, but you don't show your garage off. Well, with garage experts, you do. I do. I had them come do my flooring and customized storage. And when I say customized, not customized based on the room, the size of the room, the space in the room, but how do I use it? Do you do a lot of electrical work? Do you do any hobby stuff? Do you do a lot of gardening? So you pot plants often, or you maybe don't do much at all in your garage other than park your car. Maybe you like to wash your own car. All of that determines what sort of storage you're going to have designed. And then the flooring is flooring that you cannot do on your own. I'm telling you, I know there are kits. You can buy the epoxy flooring and so forth. It is nowhere near the same. You can check out the video of the transformation of my garage under the videos on Facebook, 1041 Nick Reed. Also a video conversation with Mark and Shelley Long of Garage Experts under Nick's endorsements at ksgf.com. They're great people, too. I want to make just a couple of comments about the last segment, because it is a segment that I anticipate, understandably, can create mixed reactions from people. And there's been I don't know if I'd call it a movement, but there's certainly been a push by people within the Ozark community, some parents, some former, teachers, current teachers even, who feel as if the school does not deal with issues in a proper manner, whether that's legally or culturally. And there are billboards that have launched promoting SaveOzarkSchools.org that detail some of these issues and so forth. And so we had some of the individuals in to talk a bit about that. And just to launch my point here, I'll read to you a couple of text messages. One noting that a family member is president, assuming a family member of the person who sent this text, is president of the local area school board and has had no issues with outbursts, parents feeling left out. The president walks the room before meetings, welcoming new faces and explaining, we work for you, so we want you to be informed and have a voice. Raise your hand if something isn't clear. It's time to speak. I'll call on you. If not, I'll look and nod my head, but I will call on you when it's time. And I will say, I don't recall any accusations of intimidation from school board members, but it was more from the superintendent. And in fact, one of the text messages coming in saying that it was the head of the school board that actually had to intervene when there was a conflict, if you will, between the superintendent and one of the citizens. So that wasn't necessarily a complaint. But somebody else noting, well, there's always more to the story, and that's absolutely true. Absolutely true. And their major concern wasn't, as I understood it, these little conflicts that we had and we're right and they're wrong, but just how the way things are run. And it all essentially boils down to, and this is one of the reasons that I wanted them to come on here, our school boards generally in this country are occupied by members who don't know who their boss is. They don't know who they're working for. And some of that is on the community at large. If you have listened to me for any time at all, you know that I have been very vocal. This was well before pre-COVID. That school board members have generally seen themselves as representing the school district. Yeah, the people vote for them, but their job is to get the district what the district needs. They are the experts. If the superintendent says we need to do this, the school board votes and makes it happen. When that's not what school boards are supposed to do. It is supposed to be the other way around. It is the community. They are to represent the community, and then instead of directing the community to support this or vote for that because it's what the school district says it needs, they are supposed to direct the superintendent, direct the curriculum, do all of these things based on what the community wants. And we are so jacked up in this country about who should be in charge of our kids and in charge of education. I think that idea is upside down. Even explaining it, instead of hearing it and going, well, oh yeah, that is true, they think, well, we can't do that. Oh, we can't. You have to have a degree to understand what kids need to learn. You have to go to college, and you have to have this expertise. We can't let random people in the community who don't know anything about education deciding the direction of the district. I think to them that is a horrific idea, but that's what it's supposed to be. Now, that being said, if school board members never hear from parents, they never hear from the community, and all they ever do is hear from the superintendent and the principals and the teachers' unions, then you can't really blame them for, over time, evolving into this relationship in which they are representing the teachers' unions and the administration instead of the people, because that's who they're hearing from. It's like lawmakers in Washington, D.C. who don't get phone calls from their constituents, but every single day they have PACs and lobbyists coming in, and then back at home, citizens are mad because, well, they're not listening to us. Well, if there's nothing to listen to. So my overall theme, if you want to call it, or motivation for that hour that we had isn't necessarily to right any specific wrongs, but it is to highlight these dynamics and the relationships and everybody. Say you've got the three participants, if you will. You have the district, that's the administrators, the principals, and the superintendents. Then you have the school board. Then you have the community. Everyone has their fingerprints on this upside-down dynamic. Everyone does. The community for not being involved as they should, for not demanding that school boards represent them instead of the school district. School board members for, at the same time, representing the wrong side of the equation. And administrators for looking at themselves as the entity who is the expert, and their relationship is to tell school board members, this is what we need, you make it happen. And all of those positions have led us to where we are today. So everybody has a degree of responsibility in it. And it's cyclical, and oftentimes it feeds itself. Which came first, the chicken or the egg? But ultimately, it really doesn't matter. What matters is that we fix this thing. And it oftentimes doesn't mean that you have a district, even if that dynamic is upside down, because I suspect there are very few districts in this country that do it correctly, in which all players in that relationship understand the proper roles. In fact, I would not be surprised if there really wasn't a single district. Maybe if you have Amish country, I could see that being an Amish country. And it doesn't mean that the people involved are bad or ill-intended. Now, sometimes you do have that. I mean, the Springfield School District is just an example of the total, complete establishment whose number one goal, whether they recognize it or not, but it's clear that it's a proactive goal, is to, instead of educate kids, it is to turn them into political and social activists. and continue to see the decline in the successful education of young people, which latest numbers show that is once again the case with Springfield. But it isn't always because of people with nefarious intent. It isn't always. You can have a district filled with people whose number one priority really truly is to only educate, not socially indoctrinate. But if those relationships aren't corrected, then we have a problem. And so that's ultimately my goal. Now, the reason I say that that can oftentimes get lost because people get defensive. And you can sometimes not see the forest for the trees. And I recognize that that's the case. But at the same time, I think this is just too important that we rebalance things and get these relationships back where it is that they are supposed to be. Jason Rima with the latest news. First alert forecast, cloudy, chance of rain today, 49 for the high, rain likely 40 tonight, rain tomorrow, 53 Friday. The day of happy hour at Retro Metro 4 to 6. No rain. No rain. It's going to be a wonderful happy hour, a high of 51. Sarah Myers.
Yeah. Thank you for... Am I on? Well, with rain in the forecast, at least one person may experience some roof issues, yellowing on your ceiling, drips and leaks and gutter issues, and I hope that's not you. But if it is, call the Pyramid Roofing Company. Now, Josh and his team, they are just top-notch folks. They'll come out, they'll get on your roof, take tons of photos and videos, and see exactly what is going on. And they'll be upfront and honest with you, too. They don't sugarcoat things, they're just honest about it, and that's one of the reasons why I really like the Pyramid Roofing Company. They won't try to upsell you. If you need just a roof repair, they'll let you know. And if you do need a whole new roof, well, they'll get you on the schedule, and they will get your brand new roof in just a matter of days, and you won't have to worry about roof issues anymore. So if you do find yourself looking for a great roofing company, highly recommend the Pyramid Roofing Company. You can find all of the contact info for Josh and his team at ksgf.com under the Sarah's Endorsements tab.
And Pyramid Roofing's also sponsoring our bracket. A lot of stations that do basketball brackets and so forth. Last year we did Trump's nicknames. This year it's Biden quotes, and it's audio. So go to ksgf.com and go through, and the first bracket, you listen to the audio, you pick your favorites, and then that will pick next week's and then the next week's. And every week that you participate, you get an entry in for a prize, which is yet to be determined.
Now,
what?
Did you fill out your bracket?
No, I haven't.
So I did the test bracket for me, and I get to see what percentage of audio that I picked is winning.
Oh, does it do that for everyone?
I would assume so.
Okay, I didn't know if as an administrator or something.
Nope, I did it as a test person.
All right,
I'm very
upset. Very good. And
my favorite is not winning.
Oh,
I know.
Well, and here's the thing: the winner of the competition is not chosen based on the prediction. It will, everyone who participates will be in the drawing, and then the winner will be randomly drawn. But your vote does determine what eventually will be chosen by the KSGF audience as the best or worst or most brilliant, however you want to see it, Joe Biden quote that is part of the bracket. That's at ksgf.com. Melissa McCarthy, she's an actress. Funny gal. She took to social media to defend drag queens as they remain under increased scrutiny in some states. Quote, "You've been entertained by drag your whole life. Don't pretend it's a problem now," read a picture posted to the actress's Instagram. Well, not everyone has. I mean, now these, this is kind of the weird world. We all can fall into this trap. We assume that our life is the same life, or our experiences are the same experience everyone else has. So if you are somebody like, I'm guessing Melissa McCarthy has been entertained by drag queens her whole life, she assumes everyone has been, not realizing that a majority of people have not been entertained by drag queens, drag shows their entire life. Now, they have been around for the duration of people's lives, but that does not mean that they have been entertained by them. That goes for anything. I mean, her photo featured several examples of male characters dressed as women, including Robin Williams, Monty Python's John Cleese, and a Looney Tune character, among others. The post garnered nearly 300,000 likes. Some of it's obviously conflating. Some of it could be gaslighting, and I don't know how much. Some of this, I believe it's rationalization. The claim, don't pretend it's a problem now. What is a problem now, which is a new problem, is the desire of some adults to take children to drag shows that are sexually explicit. These are two totally separate things. And I think some of these people, they actually gaslight themselves somehow. And I believe it is because they oftentimes are so obsessed with political opposition. When they hear somebody that is a conservative that doesn't want a kindergartner to have somebody at a drag show pole dance in front of them, they have to figure out a way to disagree with that because Republicans are bad, conservatives are bad. And so in their minds, they twist it into it's a war against drag queens. I don't know if you didn't notice it, but here's just a little bit of a news flash. No one was even talking about this. This was not an issue until some adults wanted to make children part of it. Prior to that, no one cared. No one complained about drag shows. No one complained about drag queens. Nobody cared. Republicans didn't care. Nobody cared. Did you notice that wasn't an issue until the last couple of years? It's interesting that Melissa McCarthy is actually making that point without realizing what point she's making. She's listing the picture of Monty Python's John Cleese, Robin Williams dressed in drag and saying, well, you didn't have a problem with it then. That's right. We didn't. Because we don't have a problem with it. Do what you want to do. But when you start telling parents who send their kindergartners to school that they need to be part, or you have middle schools like in Columbia that without letting parents know, take their children to be part of it, that's where the problem occurs. And it doesn't mean that you are all of a sudden against drag queens or drag shows or strip shows or whatever. If you don't want your, to illustrate a parallel here, there are lots of people that have no problem with strip clubs. There are lots of people that go to strip clubs, but that doesn't mean that they have their 8-year-old child go with them. And simply because they don't want their 8-year-old child to be exposed to it doesn't mean that they are against them or hate strippers. It's called age appropriate. People who are opposed to 8-year-olds having sex aren't opposed to, quote, sex overall, are they? It's about the age. Melissa McCarthy is actually making a point here that she doesn't realize, and that is this is not about drag. It's about children. But unfortunately, I suspect that she gets all sorts of praise from people on the left who don't realize that she is actually making a point against their cause. It is not anti-trans. It's not anti-drag. It's nothing to do with that. It's about the kid component. Springfield's Talk 104.1. I'm Nick Reed. American Transmissions Talk and Text Line 447-KSGF. Friday, we will have the Friday Road Show out at Scramblers. Sponsored by Affordable Towing. Hey, how about a traffic update? First alert forecast sponsored by St. Clair of the Ozarks Home Improvements. Cloudy, 40% chance of rain today with a high of 49. Rain likely tonight, 40, 53, and rain tomorrow, mostly sunny. Friday with a high of 51. Sarah Myers.
Hey, that's me. Beatles property maintenance.
Yeah, I know.
First, yeah. That's what I'm going to talk about is Beatles. Now, first things first, Beatles is spelled Beadles. And what do? Well, they do a variety of home repairs and maintenance. Now, your home is probably the largest investment that you will make in your lifetime, which means that you need to protect it the best that you can. And when unexpected home repairs and maintenance pop up, that can be incredibly frustrating. You know, who do I call? Who can I trust? Who can get this job done as quickly as possible, as affordable as possible, and somebody that I can trust? And that's why I love to recommend my friends over at Beatles Property Maintenance. Now, Bruce and his team, they have done so much work at my house, from fixing my kitchen floor to fixing some subflooring, electrical. I mean, they have done so much stuff at my house, and I continue to hire them just because they are fantastic to work with. So if you do find yourself with an unexpected home repair or maintenance that pops up, highly recommend Beatles Property Maintenance. Now, you can find all of the contact information for Bruce and the Beatles Property Maintenance team at ksgf.com under the Sarah's Endorsements tab.
What are you having at Retro Metro for lunch today?
Probably a salad, because I'm still on the diet thing.
I haven't had the Nanny Stroganoff for a while.
You know what? Even
think I'm ready
the
for that again.
salads and the soups there are fantastic.
Yeah.
They
Yeah, you
really
say
are.
that like
a salad.
No, and they do.
They are good.
And of course, I've raved about this. I'm particular about salads. I don't. Can I say how I don't know how many salads you had on the Great Escape? Their salads were incredible.
They were. Mm-hmm.
Yes, I love salads that have the stuff in it that looks like you went through the forest and foraged things. I don't care for iceberg lettuce. I like arugula. I like peppery lettuces. I like the dark stuff. That's just what I love. And Retro Metro has fantastic salad, but some of those salads, I was so because a lot of resorts you go to and it's iceberg lettuce or maybe some spinach leaves, and man, they were fantastic.
Yeah,
but yeah, no salad. If you like salads, Retro Metro definitely. But
everything at Retro Metro is delicious.
I haven't had that one deal though with it's like a steak with is it an apricot drizzle or something over it? I
yes.
forget what it's called.
Yes.
Maybe I'll go that round.
It was good.
Oh, the decisions. If you haven't signed up for Lunch Bunch to join us at Retro Metro, just go to ksgf.com. And then, of course, we'll be there for happy hour Friday 4 to 6. There was hypocrisy's been around forever. Posers have been around forever. People who pretend they're one thing, but they're really not. And oftentimes those are one and the same. We have gotten to the point where, although to some degree most people can at least fall into that trap, there are people that try not to be that way. There are those also that don't care, and that, frankly, is the Democrat Party. Don't care one bit. They don't care. In the first hour, talking about January 6th, I noted outside of January 6th, there was a police officer who shot an unarmed person. That, according to all witnesses, was not in any way, shape, or form a threat to the officer who shot her. And, according to witnesses, including other law enforcement, they never heard him say, "Stop, police," or he just shot her dead. Outside of that instance, can you think of a time when the left did not demand to see footage of a shooting that involved a police officer and an unarmed person? Can you think of one? And immediately, if not, burn stores down, throw Molotov cocktails at police cars. Politicians demand transparency, accusations of cover-up. But amazingly enough, those same people not only aren't crying out for footage or more information regarding the unarmed shooting and killing of a person by a police officer, they're demanding that footage related to that incident be covered up. Now, if you're on the left, how do you possibly justify that? You don't. You just give up on caring about honesty and ethics. You don't even think about it. That's how you deal with those things. You don't think about it. You do not have that internal discussion in order to try and be a better person or an honest person. I bring this up because there's another glaring example out there. And on one hand, it's laughable, but on the other hand, it's sad because it shows there really truly is no moral direction whatsoever with the Democrat Party as a whole. Now, the Republican Party clearly has massive issues, particularly, the Senate side of things, Mitch McConnell, Mitt Romney, all that whole crew, they're just as bad as the Democrats. There are good elected Republicans. They are there. Most of them are not in leadership positions, and I think that McCarthy should be still afforded, at this time, an opportunity to prove himself. And so far, at least the release of the 41,000 hours of footage shows that he's on the opposite side of the establishment in this capacity. He's being attacked. He's on the side of the people on this one. But when it comes to a voluntary divorce from morals and ethics, the Democrat Party, that has been done some time ago. We used to be told that corporations should be completely separate from politics. Corporations should not be able to donate to campaigns because they're not people, that politicians that are controlled by corporations are bad, until, of course, the corporations do something that they like. For example, Major League Baseball. Doing economic damage to a state of Georgia, essentially holding them hostage, telling them, if you do not vote against legislation we want, we will not Hold the all-star game here. Economically damaging the people of a state unless politicians pass legislation they want. Boy, they loved that. Oh, that's wonderful. When it came to Disney, which for generations has had this special relationship with government in which they pretty much got to run themselves. They got to decide their own environmental regulations. Now, of course, again, the left, oh, corporations are evil. Man, we need to have rules. We need to have regulations. Disney escaped all of these things that the left claim corporations need to have watching over them because corporations are naturally evil. Until, of course, DeSantis said, you know what, maybe you should be treated like every other corporation in Florida and not have these special exemptions. All of a sudden, how dare you not give this massive international corporation special privileges? How dare you not allow this massive international corporation to escape environmental regulations? How dare you? You see, there's no moral compass whatsoever. They referenced DeSantis in that specific instance as being fascist. This is what dictators look like. This is what authoritarians look like. This proves that Trump laid the groundwork for an even greater evil in DeSantis, because here you have a politician that is dictating to businesses what it is that they can or cannot do, how it is they must do business. Now, of course, DeSantis was actually doing the opposite and saying, we're going to treat you like everybody else, no special privileges. But that aside, targeting Disney as a company by a governor is total fascism. You may have heard that Walgreens has announced that in a number of states that they're not going to mail abortion pills out. They're not going to do it. And they were going to have to deal with all sorts of legal challenges regarding this, and many people would argue that that sort of pill that oftentimes leads to hospitalizations if it's not used properly, probably not the best thing to just send people in the mail, but nonetheless, Walgreens is like, we're not going to do it. Now you have people like Gavin Newsom who are saying, well, we just might ban Walgreens from operating in our state because they won't operate the way we want them to. The Federalist writes that this week we learned Walgreens wouldn't sell the abortion pill in 20 red states that have laws curbing unfettered abortions. Gavin Newsom, the man who presides over a state whose economic controls are beginning to resemble an Eastern European republic circa 1975, promised the pharmaceutical company would face consequences and that California would no longer do any business with the chain because it cowers to the extremists and put women's lives at risk. And of course, is the left calling him a fascist for threatening to punish a company because it's doing something that he doesn't like? No. They're right there on board. They're rallying behind him. They're cheering him on. The reality is, people on the left don't have a problem with dictators. They just want their dictators. And they demonstrate that on a daily basis. And this is yet another example. They do not have a problem with fascism. They just want their fascists to be in charge. They have no problem with communism, with socialism, with authoritarianism, with totalitarianism. They just want their people in charge of it. And this is just another glaring example of that. Springfield's Talk 104.1. I'm Nick Reed. Emily Johnson, House Theory Realty broker and owner of House Theory Realty. Those of you who have used her services, you can do a community service, and if you have not left a review for other people to read, I would ask you to do so. I on a daily basis, try to spread the word. We are an information station. We try to provide useful information to people, and many of you in your lifetime, if you haven't already, you either are going to or you know someone who's going to need to buy or sell a home, and that's a massive deal. There's so many things that can go wrong, and I don't mean house exploding wrong, but if it's overpriced, or if you have a realtor that doesn't want to hurt your feelings and you think it's worth more than it actually is, and they don't want to tell you otherwise, and so they say, oh, okay, and then it doesn't sell, and then you've got what I consider the dreaded price reduce sign in your front yard, because to me that is a red flag. It's like, well, why do they have to reduce the price? So you've got to have somebody good from the get-go, and I'm telling you, Emily Johnson, House Theory Realty. She is the one for you if you want that experience. If you want a miserable experience, you can gamble and go elsewhere. Some people, they have kind of a sadomasochism thing going on, and they like pain, they like agony. If that's the case, Emily Johnson, probably not for you. But if you want a good experience, that's who you go with. USDC judge strikes down Missouri's Second Amendment Preservation Act as being unconstitutional. Missouri started this battle back in 2021. With the signing of the Second Amendment Preservation Act into law, a.k.a. SAPA. The act's language is quite plain, allowing local law enforcement to refuse to cooperate with any federal law enforcement action that seeks to confiscate the guns of its citizens. The law also penalizes any local law enforcement agencies who refuse to adhere to the law. Newton County, which is in the southwestern corner of the state, not the bottom corner, but it's just above that, was the first to kick things off. I believe they refused to run tests on something for the feds, and so this was an opportunity for the feds to come in and say, states' rights, I don't think so. Second Amendment, I don't think so. What do you think you are? In America? What do you think this is, a free country? Biden's Department of Justice, which had not found a civil liberties infringement it hasn't liked, decided it needed to oppose Missouri, claiming that we violated the supremacy clause in which Joe Biden is ultimately supreme. Of course, then AG Eric Schmidt, who's now in the U.S. Senate, pushed back hard in a 7-page response letter, right on brand. They sued. In a separate legal action, the city of St. Louis County and Jackson County also filed suit against the SAPA law, claiming it harmed local law enforcement because if those counties have ever done anything, it's shown a great loyalty to local law enforcement. So there were pressures without and pressures within in opposition to the law. Yesterday, a U.S. District Court judge ruled SAPA unconstitutional. That's noted. It's an interesting fight, particularly after the June 2022 Bruin ruling by SCOTUS. Does the Second Amendment language shall not be infringed extend to federal law enforcement action against citizens when the state is ordered to uphold and protect the Second Amendment? Now, I don't know about you, but to me that seems like a pretty obvious answer. That's exactly who it specifically is talking about when it says shall not be infringed. I mean, that was the whole point of the Bill of Rights, was to tell specifically the federal government, here are things that apply to you in terms of hands-off, and one of them, the rights of the citizens, even like for forming militias, have well-regulated militia, that shall not be infringed by you. Freedom of speech, shall not. I suppose the founders should have put in there in every instance, this is for you. First Amendment shall not be violated by you, federal government. Freedom of assembly shall not be, the people have the right to do it, shall not be touched. Stay away. You are the entity that cannot do this. So for it to be a head scratcher, now when it says that people's rights shall not be infringed, is this referring to the government? Is this referring to the feds? It's not a real head scratcher. Unless apparently you have a law degree. Springfield's Talk 104.1, I'm Nick Reed. Marianne Williamson, who has announced her intentions to run against Joe Biden for the Democratic nomination, she's hit back at Karine Jean-Pierre over crystal ball diss. During Monday's daily White House press briefing, Jean-Pierre responded to a question about Williamson by mocking her candidacy for president. By the way, isn't she not supposed to be, quote, campaigning from the White House? There have been a number of issues that she's like, well, I can't really talk about that because of the Hatch Act. I can't weigh in politically, even in instances where it clearly was not an issue of campaigning. But here she is attacking and mocking in the context of asking the question. In fact, you kind of almost wonder if Peter Doocy wasn't asking this just to see if she would answer it. Totally violating the Hatch Act. During the briefing, Jean-Pierre responded to a question about Williamson by mocking her candidacy for president, including joking about crystal balls and auras in an apparent reference to Williamson's past as a spiritual advisor and self-help author. She said, I'm not tracking that. I mean, if I had, what's it called, a little globe here, a crystal ball, then I would tell you, a magic 8-ball or whatever, if I could feel her aura, prompting everyone in the room to laugh. Well, isn't this brilliant to the Democrat Party? So right now, Democrats have before them an old, senile, rich white guy and a woman. And we're going to once again see if Democrats are actually ready for a female president. But this is such a clear involvement from the White House by the press secretary in a campaign comment. Glenn Beck's next. I'm Nick Reed.